we are going to see how to create a EKS cluster from scratch. In this, we are going to use the EKSCTL to launch our latest version of the Kubernetes, and I'm going to discuss you what resources you can create and how you can start using the EKS cluster from the scratch. Okay, so currently there is nothing. This is a fresh AWS account, so we are going to create everything which is required for making the EKS cluster up and running. So very first thing that you need to do is you need a IAM role, and this role is basically you are going to attach it to the EC2 instance through which you are going to run EKSCTL. Now EKSCTL is a command line tool provided by AWS, which makes it easier to launch the EKS cluster and make modifications to that cluster using a command line tool. Now, basically, the advantage of this EKSCTL is mainly that it hides all the complexity from you. If you have watched our previous video in which we have shown you how to create the cluster from scratch on the EC2 instances, you will know that there are a number of things that needs to be taken care of. These things become even more bigger when you talk about the cloud, because you have to maintain all the VPC networking, then net gateways and everything. So in order to make it more simpler for you, the AWS cloud has introduced the EKSCTL, which allows you to manage all the things by default, and we are going to discuss about that more. But for now, just understand, because you are going to interact with the AWS, so you need a IAM role through which you are going to authorize, and for authorizing you need permissions for IAM role. For our use case, since this is a test implementation, we are directly going to use a admin so that we don't have to dig deeper inside the IAM roles and the permissions associated with it. But if you want to limit down, you can go ahead and do it. For our use case, since our main focus is to show you how to launch the EKS cluster, so we are going to use the admin role. And for this purpose, I'm very much going to create one role. So go under the IAM roles and create role. Here, since we are going to use spin up a EC2 instance to run our EKSCTL, because that's the most easiest way to launch this. You can do it from your command line, like your system as well. But then I want to make it more AWS specific. That's why I'm going to launch a EC2 instance. So now just go ahead and select EC2, because this role will be belonging to EC2, and click next. Now here we are going to use the administrator access. As I told you that this comes with a escalated privileges, so you will have all the admin level privileges, so that IAM permission issue does not come into the picture. This is only recommended for the test environment cases where you are launching. In production environment, you might want to restrict your role to even less permission to make it more appropriate from a security perspective. That being said, you go ahead and create a role. So for our purpose, we are simply going to name it as K8 admin. Okay, you can name it anything that you like, but this is an admin level role and that we are going to create. Now just go ahead and create this. Now once you have created the K8 admin role, which you are going to use later, you can go to the EC2 instances now and start working on the EC2 instance launch. Now I'm going to keep the region to US West 2. You can keep any region that you like. Okay, so there shouldn't be any. I'm just going to name this node as K8S launch node. Launch node simply means that we are going to install the EKSCTL. This is the only purpose of this node. Later we can terminate as well if we don't need this instance anymore. Now I'm going to select Amazon Linux. That is the Linux flavor that we are going to use, since we have to deal with the AWS CLI, and all are basically available by default. So that will be our choice, but you can do it from any of them. Linux flavors, you can use Ubuntu or CentOS or anything that you like. So you can go ahead with any of them. We are going to keep it to T2 instance micro to make it free. This is for the demonstration purpose. And then I would like to create one new key pair, and this time I'm going to call it as K8S admin. Okay, and then I will create a default security group which is going to be allowed from anywhere. Since this is more for the demonstration purpose, you might want to limit this to your IP, or you want to make it more restrictive. Then I want to increase the disk to 30 GB. Okay, So I will say check I am instance profile. I will like to add the role to my instance, so I will say create admin. This is the role I previously created. Rest all default is just fine. Okay, so I don't want any changes on that side. So it will create one instance, and this is the very much we have gone mostly with the defaults, just that we have added a role here to make the permissions of that role available to run the EKSCTL on this instance later. So just go ahead and click on launch instance. Now all right, so it's also asking us for the VPC information like that. Okay, if you are not having usually it should take this by default, or let's do one thing, let's launch it in the North Virginia. That way it would be available by default. So I'm just going to fill the same information again, say Amazon Linux and T2 micro, and I will say KTS admin 1. Okay, because I previously created one. Now I have it has we are going to use the default VPC and the subnets which are available. Security group is set to anywhere, and we just add the EBS volume around 30 GB. Okay, and then under the advanced detail we are going to add the instance profile as create admin. Okay, and then just launch the instance, and it's asking us for the key pair, so we can simply say KTS admin 1. Okay, and we say create key pair, so it will download this. Let's just go ahead and launch the instance. Now it has downloaded the key pair. We can use that key pair for launching, and it has created our instance. Just click on the instance ID. It's in pending state right now, so it's launching the instance right now. This is the public IP which you would like to use to connect to your instance, so just copy the public IP for now. You can actually create a VPN and connect to it, but that is the more advanced version where you are going to launch a open VPN and then connect using the private IP address. Without a VPN you cannot do it. So for our purpose we are going to stick to the public IP address for now. Let's clear this, and now we are going to connect to this. So we are simply going to say SSH-I and the instance, like the IP that we want to connect, and the user. Now if you want to see how do you connect to this instance, okay, so it's still launching. You can click on this connect as well. It will show you what the connect command. So it says that you can use this fem file. So let's just one more thing, you need to make the permission for the fem file that you just downloaded. So just say SSH-I, give the key through which you want to log in. Okay, so I want to log in with this key, and then I can just simply copy this same user with the IP, and this should log me into the instance. Okay, once it asks for fingerprint, go ahead and say yes, I want to log in. Okay, at this point it has successfully logged you in inside the instance. So at this point we have launched one Amazon EC2 instance on which we are going to install EKSCTL, and then we are going to make use of it. Okay, so all right, at this point we have already attached the role, so we just run AWS configure to specify the region in which we are going to launch our EKS cluster. So I will say default access key ID, secret access key ID, because these access key and secret key it will generate from the IAM role, which will be available for 15 minutes on the rotational basis, so it makes it more secure. Then I need to give the region, so I will just simply say US West 2, or let's stick to US East 1 only. Okay, that way we already have the VPC and all the networking configured in the US East 1 region, so I just keep it US East 1. And then we say output. Output we can change to JSON if we like, or you can keep it default. JSON is default. Okay, so at this point we have configured the AWS CLI for our machine. Okay, and once you have configured this, you can go ahead and download the EKSCTL on your machine. For downloading EKSCTL, you can use the curl and directly download from the official website of AWS, which is from S3. They have directly put it. Okay, we can say Amazon AWS.com / Amazon EKS / and then the version that you want to download. I want to download the latest version, which is 1.28.3 2023 11 14. So this is the complete URL for downloading the EKSCTL. We have AMD 64, and we are going to download the kubectl first, and later we are going to download the EKSCTL. So first download the kubectl. Kubectl is basically the command line through which you are going to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, this is basically a binary. If you see here, it's a binary which we have downloaded, and basically using this kubectl you can interact with your Kubernetes cluster. You can also log into that EKS cluster, and then you can check the pods and launch and do the deployment and that kind of stuff. So basically this kubectl is going to be using as a command line which basically interacts with the API server and converts all our commands into the API call, because that is what Kubernetes understands, right? So at this point we have successfully downloaded the kubectl. We now other thing is we are going to make it executable, because this is a binary. So we will say we are going to make this kubectl executable since it's a binary, and then we are going to change to the normal user, which is not a root. Okay, so we are going to access through the EC2 user, which is you can say this is a normal user, not having, this is not root, though it's going to have the sudo permission. Okay, now we are going to move we are going to create a binary directory under the home directory of this user. Okay, and then we are going to move the kubectl that we just downloaded. So we are simply going to say sudo move, or we can say sudo cp, and we are going to copy the kubectl binary that we just downloaded. Okay, /root. Okay, just give the complete path, and then we want to download this under home bin kubectl. Okay, now once you copy this binary, then you can export the path to make sure that this file is in your path, and you can call it directly. Okay, so I'm just going to call the path, and I'm going to append the $home bin, because this is where we have kept our kubectl. Now once we do this, and if I check directly the version, I can say kubectl version, and I can say client, because we are using the client version. So it shows us the client version. Now we are able to directly call the kubectl. Okay, so at this point kubectl has been successfully installed. The only thing remaining is we need to download the EKSCTL. So let's go ahead and download the EKSCTL, through which we are going to launch our EKS cluster. So we will simply say curl -- silent, so that it doesn't print all lot of stuff information on our screen, and we are going to download it from the it's publicly available from the GitHub. Okay, so you can directly download from the GitHub, and we will say EKSCTL. Okay, releases. This release will keep on updating, so this will be for different operating system, depends upon your operating system. So we are going to make it little bit dynamic, so that it automatically figures out which version it has to download for us. So we will say EKSCTL $, and this is basically going to identify your operating system which you are running. So you name _s, and then the version of the processor, which is AMD 64.tar.gz. Okay, so it's basically a tar file that it's going to download, and we are going to also untar this simultaneously as it downloads. and we are going to extract this star file and inside the temp folder. Okay, so just run this command and it should create a folder. Now we are going to directly move this folder which has been created inside the temp directory EKSCTL to the USR bin. Okay, all right. So once you have done this, you can go ahead and directly say EKSCTL and version. Okay, once you run this command, it should show you the version. That means EKSCTL has been successfully installed. So up till now, for a quick revision, what we have done, we have basically created one Amazon Linux. We configured the AWS CLI, we created the role, then we downloaded the kubectl, and we also downloaded the EKSCTL. That's it. Once you have done this, you can go ahead and use this EKSCTL to launch the EKS cluster. So you can simply say EKSCTL create, and you can say cluster, name of your cluster. So you can provide the name of your cluster. I will just simply say dev cluster for now, denoting it's our development cluster. Then I can specify the version. Now version will be in the upper level version, like 1.28, 1.27. Since the latest one is 1.28, I'm keeping it as 1.28. Then you need to specify the region. So I will say US East 1 is our region. And then you can go ahead and provide the node group -name. The node group is basically it creates a group for our worker nodes. Okay, under which all our worker groups will be created, worker nodes will be created. Then you can specify the node type, the type of node that you want to create. I will say t3.micro, which comes under the free version. So we are going to use t3 micro. Then how many nodes you want to create? I want to create 3 worker nodes. Okay, you can change that according to your requirements. Then we can also set up the auto scaling for this node. So I can say maximum nodes can be 4. So we are also setting up the auto scaling between these nodes for our EKS cluster. It means that it's going to launch the EC2 instances inside our dashboard, and we can directly access those EC2 instances running our pods on it. You can also launch it into the Fargate, but in those cases you will not get access to the EC2 instance. Basically the instance which is running your pod, rather it will be directly created in the AWS account, and then it's going to connect with that. So Fargate is a little different from the manage. The obvious advantage is that it comes with the less administration, but then you have less control. You cannot go inside and check the things inside your pod like that on the instance level. You can still go inside the pod and check in the Fargate as well, using the directly with the CLI or using something like Lens. I will show you which in the later videos. For now, just understand that you will have access to the EC2 instance, but in case of Fargate, you will only have access to the pod. Okay, that's the major difference. Now, once we run this command, it's going to create the cluster. That's all that is required for launching the EKSCTL from scratch. And once now what will happen is, as soon as I run this command, it's going to launch a cloud formation. Okay, let's run this. Now you see it started a bunch of processes, which is has been started now. Okay, and it has started creating the Kubernetes cluster. So basically what AWS has done is it has tried to hide the complexity of launching the Kubernetes cluster from your perspective, but we are going to take a look anyways to understand what this command basically does in behind. Okay, so you can go under the cloud formation. Command of EKSCTL actually triggers the cloud formation. So you should see a cloud formation stack here. You can see dev cluster, okay, and it's create in progress. So basically this is what it has started creating, and this is what actually EKSCTL does. It has started creating a cluster, and you will see that it started doing bunch of process, right? Although we have not even said those things, it automatically picks up this and starts creating everything. So let's quickly go through what all things it has already done and what it's doing. Now understand this, once you have run this command, this is going to take a few minutes to complete, right? Depending upon how much time it takes to create the resources inside your AWS cluster. Till that time you need to wait for some minutes to get it complete. In the meantime, let's explore what it's basically doing. So it's basically creating some ELB permission, CloudWatch metrics, table association, route table association, okay, public subnets, and for the US region. Now all these public subnets, route table associations, these are basically going to be used by our EKS cluster. So it's creating the subnets, route tables, okay, private subnets also. Then it's creating the VPC gateway attachment, ingress, internode groups, NAT gateways, and NAT gateways again, cloud watch metrics, ELB permissions, cluster shared node groups, security groups. Also it's creating subnets, public subnets, private subnets, and public route tables, okay, and then subnet private IDs. So a lot of stuff is getting created. It's also creating a VPC, okay, net IP VPC. So a lot of things are getting created behind the scenes in order to launch our entire cluster. Now just wait for some time, and till the time it creates all these resources, okay. Once it creates the resources, then your cluster should be up and running, okay. In the meantime, if you want, you can go and take a look. It should you should see something like if you go into EKS, you should see your cluster there, okay, although it would be under the creation process only. So if you see, it's creating a dev cluster right now. Right now nodes have not been created, node groups have not been created, so it's going to take some time. But you can see this is the cluster that we have created, dev cluster, from the EKSCTL command line. And then it has created this VPC, and it has associated the subnets, right? So what it does is it basically assigns two public subnets, two private subnets, like that. This is the default service IP it has automatically provided. IPv4 is the range. Then it has also created one security group for our EKS cluster, and it has said that the API server endpoint will be public because we have just created by default, right? So it's launching in a public subnet, and it's also going to add-ons will be added here, the core DNS, to make the cluster work. So those things will also be created. That's why it takes that much time to create the resources, because a number of things needs to be created to make the EKS cluster work, okay. So this is the current status. Most of the resources have been created and others are in progress still to get created. So wait for some time to get this completed. It's still in progress, so you can refresh here, and you can see this comes with a bunch of add-ons. Add-ons has not been added. Once the cluster is ready, then it actually creates those add-ons like core DNS, okay, which is required for the internal DNS configuration and all, okay. And then it will also show us the access roles which are there. Then you can configure the observability, and it will also show the any changes which you are applying to the cluster and the tags here. So here are the bunch of tags which the EKSCTL has created by default, okay. So this tag is particularly helpful to understand which version of EKSCTL was being used to launch our cluster, right? So that's an important information. So it also includes that. Then it's created all the other information, okay. So that's how you are going to launch the EKS cluster. Just wait for some time, everything should be up and available. It usually take around 5-10 minutes for making all the things available and making your cluster up and running. All right, at this point, if we these are the events, right? So if we check the stack info, it says create is complete, okay. If we go to our cluster, then we see that the status is active. If we go under compute, we see that the node group has been created, okay. So again, the node group has been created, and if we check back our instances, we see all the 3 instances are up and running. What this means is that our cluster has been created now, and we are good to use this EKS cluster now. So at this point, the EKS cluster has been successfully been created. Okay, you can check under the observability as well. Okay, and so basically this cluster is up and running and ready for us to use with all the necessary computing, networking, everything is in place now. So that's the major thing about how to create launch a EKS cluster from scratch. Okay, so at this point the cluster is up and running. Okay, and that's all for this video on how to launch EKS cluster from scratch. Now there are a number of things like you want to connect to this cluster, then you want to create some deployments, you want to do some additional stuff in the EKS cluster that we are going to cover in the videos ahead. For now, this is just the basics of how to launch a EKS cluster from scratch. That's all for this video. We are going to continue in the videos ahead, okay, on the same cluster. Thank you all. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please go ahead and subscribe, and do leave your comments if you face any issue. That's all. Thank you.